Streaming. Yes. YouTube. Yes. And we're live. So, welcome everyone to another inspiring session for today. I'm sure you've been tuning into different sessions from different speakers, but what especially on the topic of gender, we have now joining us Annelieze Potgieter. I am pretty sure I didn't say that right, but who is going to give a very different perspective on the topic of gender because she, as an employee in ASML, is part of employee employee resource group, which tries to address gender. And Annalisa herself is an international and a woman, as she will tell you sometimes, pretty much the only person who's both in a room. Um, so, coming from her background and experience, how does she engage with a company like ASML, which can be very male dominated and very Dutch company, and I'm sure we're going to get some very nice insights from her. So, with that, I'll give you the floor, Annalisa.
Thanks, Rikita. Yeah, so welcome. I'm Annelieze Potgieter. Yeah, it's such a hard surname to say for for some people. Yeah, so I'm going to start. Yeah, to share a bit of my experience, share some things that we have learned on the journey of being this diversity network within ASML, and also just describe a bit of where did it start, how did it start, what is it doing now. Yeah, just to give you some insight on if you would like to do something like this in your company, and what does that look like, and what could be a possible example of this. So I'm going to share my screen. Yeah. So I'm first going to just talk a little bit about me, where I come from, who I am. Then I'm going to look at what does Women at ASML do, who are we, how did it start, and then also look at what does shifting the paradigm mean, lessons we learned, and then I'll go into conclusions. And something that's quite close to my heart is this idea of not saying women are better than men, but saying, especially I love how Melinda Gates puts it on this quote. She says, that is why women have to lift each other up, not to replace men at the top of the hierarchy, but to become partners with men in ending hierarchy. And I think that's so beautifully put. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from South Africa. You can't even see my my city on this map. It's a tiny little town in the middle of South Africa. Yeah, I grew up thinking, that women weren't allowed to do that much, like stay at home and raise children. So my background is very opposite to what I am now. Then I wasn't going to be able to study, and my parents said I may not study. And then in the end, I was like, no, I'm going to do something more with my life. And engineering is the bursary I got. So I started working hard, so I definitely didn't have the same prospects for myself. And then I worked, I got a scholarship through a mining company. So that's me underground, overhauling a mud pump. But I was so determined to, make something of myself. And I studied at the university, and I ended up at ASML in the end, and very grateful to be here. And that's me in a clean room suit. So yeah, I can hardly see anything. So that's a bit of where I come from. I'm a board member at Women at ASML. So quite soon after starting at ASML, which is about just over 3 years ago, I started getting involved in where can I help? Where can I become engaged? I think I was in the clean room, tucked away, very few women around me, a big international community, but still you needed that connection. I'm a group leader, so I very, very quickly went into management. That was also my goal. And then all of a sudden it changes again by a factor about being the only woman, one of the very few women managers, and then never mind that, one of the very few non-Dutch managers. So I learned Dutch, but yeah, it was still very tough in the beginning. I'm passionate about diversity and empowering women because I've been that woman that felt so excluded, that felt every time I need to reprove myself and gain respect. Every time I start somewhere, I needed to start all over again by proving that I'm actually capable of doing these things, and also changing my mindset that, yeah, it is possible for me. So I'm really passionate about that because I've been through the struggle myself, and I really want to make it easier for other women. And then I'm also passionate about leadership, and I think leadership it has also got to do about so much about inclusivity, about making sure that there's diversity in your team, and making sure you're aware of your own biases so that you can be a better leader. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me and about what I stand for, where I come from. So now into where did women at ASML start? Why is it needed? What is the ecosystem that we exist in? So first of all, technical, male-dominated field. So we have, let me put this over here. Yeah, so we have 17% women, which means it's still significant, but it's definitely on a lower percentage. And then you must also remember that a lot of these are secretaries and some people in finance. So also the managers of women in ASML are even less. We had exponential growth of the company and the number of employees in the past couple of years. We have so many internationals, 118 different nationalities, and a third of the people are non-Dutch. So now that's a really significant part of your company. That makes a big difference that these people feel included. So then I put down things that influence engagement. So as a someone in a company, how do you feel engaged? I mean, there's so many things that internationals who come here. I mean, you have a new culture, you've got your own culture, and now you have to adapt to Dutch culture. Never mind that, you need to adapt to company culture. So you're so out of your comfort zone. It's not even true. You in this new environment, new company. You've got gender differences. You have a different native language. And then you have your own biases and your unconscious biases that come from where you come from, and that you have to deal with all of a sudden. Everybody around you has different cultural and unconscious biases. And the Dutch have their own set of biases and things that they grow up with, which is not wrong, but this is reality. So and in this ecosystem, you want people who've uprooted their lives and came to the Netherlands. You want them to feel so included that they actually stay. If people feel that they're not making a difference, they don't fit in, and they don't feel welcome, you have a big problem, because then all this money that you've invested into them and the resources is for nothing. So that's really what we wanted to do, is to say, hey, how do we help the company? How do we help women in this company feel engaged and feel like that they are important? And then what we also realized is that there's a difference between creating engagement and a cultural shift. So what you need in these companies that have grown so fast, that need to adapt to these new ways, is you need a big cultural shift, and that doesn't happen overnight. And yes, you must do it from both sides, because you've got the organization and the HR processes and those things. But in the meantime, before that culture has shifted, which is so difficult to shift, because the majority will then can be perceived as we are not good enough anymore, and you're attacking the majority, which is really not what you want. So what we've said is then, to enable this cultural shift, to act as a catalyst for this cultural shift, let us also create more things that are engaging for women, so that they can feel more part of the company, and we can bring them along and help them to also be part of this cultural shift. Then what we also realized is that there are many ways you can try and shift this paradigm. So first of all, for us, it was creating a welcoming environment for women. So bringing women together, and that really gives so much strength. That's such a big and important part, and that's the only way you can shift the paradigm of how women are perceived. And that's in the end what we got to from you can go campaigning for women's rights, and then you easily get perceived as feminists, and that's creating more exclusion. That's confirming a stigma. That's not solving the problem. That's not a permanent solution. You can only support women, and that's what we did for a while. But what happens is then it easily becomes a let's all complain together about the men women's group, and that's really also not what you want, because that's also not providing an inclusive environment. That's also not building up the company. That's reinforcing silos. That's saying here are women and here are men, and we do different things, and that's also not an ideal situation. And in the end, to shift the paradigm of how women are perceived. That's where we got to. So then you allow the majority to see the benefits of diversity, and then you start working on an inclusive company culture. So that's a bit of where we realize that that's how you can really shift the paradigm. So we started. We had also quite humble beginnings. It started about 8 years ago, so that's before my time. But then the company was very different. Then the needs of the women in the company were very different. Back then, daycare wasn't as freely available. There weren't nursing rooms. If I hear the stories of how the buildings of HR used to be, that all of a sudden there were a lot of women there, and there was only one female toilet and 9 men toilets, because that's how the company was. There were so few women that there was no point in having more than one ladies toilet. So you have all these things that needed to be changed. And so that's more what in the beginning, that's how it started. Those were the needs that these women were fighting for. And then they got also put up a nice structure. So with an advisory board of other people in the company, getting budget secured, having a website, having a newsletter that they sent out once a month. So those types of, that was really how it started. And then we went through a period where we said, okay, but this is not working. We're getting perceived as, a bit more feminist. We're getting perceived as we only do things for women. But let's change this perception. Let's change this perception of showing, hey, we're not only good at getting together and creating engagement, we can also have a very technical contribution. And then we split them, because we had a mums at ASML as well, and they were quite a very big part of women at ASML. So we split that up into parents at ASML and women at ASML. We also started providing content for everyone. We started having more technical events, for, which are definitely help women, especially the networking. A lot of women showed up, but also making sure that we start showing the men, hey, we are doing this for you as well. And rather saying, what can we do for ASML, than say, ASML, you owe us. And I think that was a big shift. So examples were like mentorship programs, which were women to women. So that's specifically for women. But leadership talks, inspirational talks. We did a lot on vitality, on work-life balance, on how to see burnout coming, also for managers. Personal development, so helping women realize, how can I increase my how can I unleash my potential in ASML? Which are ways in which I can do that? Networking, which is exceptionally important. And we also did a lot for International Women's Day. So that's like a very short summary of what we do. Lessons learned. So things I hope that if you started something like this in your company, that you don't have to make the same mistakes. You definitely need support from other women. So you need women to drive this. You need some people with passion to drive a board or to drive these initiatives. But you also need support from the organization. So you need HR to also support your cause. You need certain key stakeholders to be an advisory board, to be on your side, because otherwise it's doomed for failure, because keeping that momentum yourself without support will be very tough. So it definitely enhances your personal and professional goals, and of all the women in the organization, just the idea, even just networking and having that engagement is so important. And it really provides some visibility for a lot of women. It gives them a lot of energy, especially if it's something that they're really passionate about. And you'll find that in general, internationals are the ones that join these things, and also internationals are the one that have more passion for this, because for them it's a way more relevant topic. So we have a nice structure. So get a nice structure in place, somewhere where every quarter you at least have to report on what you've done and where you spent money, and that also gives some visibility, and also it makes it very transparent. What you should remember is that a voluntary basis, everybody works on this voluntary basis. So yes, we do have support from the organization, but my direct manager is not necessarily someone who also sees the importance of this cause, or also is willing to say, hey, you can spend X amount of hours on this topic. So what we find is a lot, especially with the board members, we do a lot of this on our own free time, which is just definitely an extra commitment. So that's one challenge that I would, that definitely should take into consideration. One thing we also, it's the general perception of women's groups. So to navigate that properly, I definitely think we in the beginning didn't navigate that cleverly enough. To from the beginning have this thing of, we are women helping women, yes, but we're actually here to help the whole organization. It's more about what not to talk about. Don't talk about how men are bad. Don't talk about how you're better than men. I think those are the type of things that can very easily change the perception of your group, and that's marginalizing people instead of creating inclusivity. And then I think to approach senior managers, that's quite tough. But definitely networking helps with that, and getting other women who are already higher up in the organization. We had a lovely group of women who went person for person through the XCOM with us, and we shared our stories, and also put that on the table for XCOM to talk about. So in that sense, we're also working on different things. And I think, so that's definitely difficult to support, to approach all the senior managers. But how you approach them should always be with what we found really works is to say, hey, how can we help you? This is really an issue. Bring the real stories, but don't go there, hey, you need to change it. More of, this is what's going on in your company, and this is what we really see happening. How can we help you, and what can we do? I think that really helps, going with that right mindset, going with a different target than in this victim mentality. That's very important. So I think as a conclusion, definitely diverse teams are way more effective, and that's something we should want in our companies. But this doesn't happen at the drop of the hat. This does, and this, it's not always more effective if the people don't feel engaged. So you can have a diverse team and say, on paper, this looks good. But if people don't feel emotionally connected, if people don't have ownership, if they don't feel valued, then it becomes really difficult. A cultural change is needed. It does not happen overnight. It's not something quick fix, okay, done. Support is needed from the organization and from managers, and in terms of budget and advisory boards, and other people also become a bit more of a cheerleader for you. I think that's definitely needed, or at least some other women, like we had Monique, which was this morning on the first event of this morning. She has also really helped us, and we said, hey, we are perceived in this way. How do we change this? How do we start something different? So you need those people who have that overview of the company to give you advice on how to proceed. So my personal experience, as Rikita mentioned in the beginning, I just after becoming a manager, I was especially in the factory there. It's not very international even, never mind women based. So in management, even on the first, so in the whole TwinScan factory, the management, there were about 120 men, and then you have the VP coming, hey, Annelieze, can we do the presentation in Dutch? And then I know that I'm one of 4 women and 2 internationals in the group. And those are the tough situations. Like, how do we change that? And I just knew in that moment, I'm not going to say no. I will rather learn Dutch than be that change. And so culture doesn't change that quickly. And I also realized that remember for men, for the Dutch male, which is probably the most prevalent stereotype that there is, or the biggest group, it's tough for them as well. I'll stop sharing now. It's tough for them as well to realize that, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should change my biases. Those cultural unconscious biases run so deep. I think we also as women need to understand how tough it is for males to hear that, that change is needed. So that's my story. I'm interested to hear if you have any questions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Annalisa. That was a very nice personal presentation, I thought, because like you also said in your presentation, it's important to connect with your personal experience. And I thought that you did that very well. I remember you once mentioned that you used to work back in South Africa in a company that dealt with mines, and you used to be one of the uh, only women, white women, who would actually go into the mines, right?
Yeah, that was, I mean, then you're not only one of the few women, but you're also really sticking out like a sore thumb. And I remember also making my overalls on purpose really dirty and trying to look as ugly as possible or as dirty as possible so that I wouldn't get so many stares.
Yeah,
Because it was just incredulous for people to realize this. Yeah, it was quite
but
an
I guess
experience.
exactly. But I guess those are the things that really make you embrace it a little bit, right? You said it's important that you start from a position. You may have to prove yourself again and again, and you can get used to that to some level. You can kind of build your own coping mechanisms with that situation, but you also sometimes say no, but I want to change the situation. And I guess having been in that situation where you are something of a yeah, lone fighter for yourself, I think that also helps you, right? We have some questions. Maybe let's start with that. So the first question is from Thomas from Fluke, who has asked, do you feel men support each other more in their career growth? And should women do the same? Or yeah, how can women do the same?
Yeah, I recently read something from the Business Harvard Review that says that men don't support each other as well as women do. Now that's definitely something we've also noticed. We started one thing like leaning circles, which is a very women-driven thing, and we had some guys also joining. And one of the guys, it hit me so hard. He said at the end of the talk, he said, "I wish men also had these types of circles, which they could talk about and really help each other up."
Yeah,
Um, and that really hit me. So no, I don't think men network in a different way. I think they network way more very they don't really they go deep into the content as soon as possible. They don't focus on the person. So I think we network in different ways. I think men do help each other a bit, but it's a bit more competitive. But yeah, women can also be the same, right? So yeah, I think we have different ways of networking and helping each other.
yeah.
Yeah. But men network more like at the social
Yeah,
borals and that. And I think women generally, I think what happens with a lot of women, oh, I need to go home. I need to go to my kids. I need to do this, this, and this. So then it becomes women have to be way more intentional
yeah.
in that sense. I think that there would be the difference.
I think women are a bit more intense as well. Men sometimes don't, yeah, they don't think too much about it. Like you said, they catch up over drinks and that's it to some extent.
Yeah.
Whereas women like to, I feel you plan and you strategize a little bit and you connect the dots. Uh,
Yeah. I don't know. I think that could be a woman, it could be a
Personality.
personality trait as well, more than a gender trait.
Yeah. So we have another question.
Mhm.
Um, what are the three main challenges in the upcoming years to be even more successful in the paradigm shift?
For me at this moment, not to lose that momentum.
Mm.
Because I think, especially with COVID and everything else, your life becomes your priority shift. So I would first of all not to lose momentum, just to keep going and to keep fighting and to keep including and to keep lifting women up and yeah. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is I see it's easier to form a board and to have six very effective, very passionate people. But the second challenge is really to how do we ignite other women and how do we get them to, in their daily lives, in everything that they do, to still be that example for men, to still work on lifting everybody up together. So that for me, how to have that from a tiny group, how to let that spread to more people. Uh, Yeah. And what was the question was in which, yeah, I just
Making
want to.
them more successful in shifting the paradigm.
Yeah, I think the third one is to really get down to talking about biases.
Mhm.
For me, that's a huge thing that we forget. Unconscious bias is so huge. And sometimes I thought, yeah, I talk about it a lot and I'm so aware of my biases until I had to review a CV from South Africa. And then I was so humbled because I realized how biased I am because of in the South African context, I put a story behind every CV. And it hit me like, yeah, it hit me so hard because I realized I'm talking about this. I'm supposed to be a role model for diversity and inclusion and not be biased. But I realized that if you're in your own environment, because you've grown up there and you have all this context, it's really hard. So that's also gave me so much understanding and empathy for the Dutch males. You know, it's tough for them with all their biases and how they've worked for years to then all of a sudden say, hey, I'm wrong and I must change my biases. I think that's really tough. So I think those three things are really big challenges.
Yeah, no, I agree. A cultural differences expert I know, he always says we all think we don't have a culture because we kind of put ourselves in the center of the world and then are very good at evaluating everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to first of all get to know your bias, like you said, right? And it's great that you have that moment where you were able to look back at yourself because that may not come at all in most scenarios. And even if you do, even if you realize I have a bias, it's so hard to work on it because it is called an unconscious bias for a reason. And especially when you are an international and a woman, it's sort of double edged, right? You
Yeah.
don't want to go too far this way or that way.
Yeah. And what
Uh,
I also realized is also having empathy for other people's biases and
yeah.
realizing what they are, because usually they're unspoken. And sometimes I act out of that bias of because I'm young and blonde and I'm one of the youngest ones, never mind the only women and the, non-Dutch and everything. All of a sudden I realized I have this huge insecurity of speaking in front of big crowds in Dutch because I feel, yeah, I feel insignificant and I feel I'm too young to have an opinion. And those are all things that we as women need to change in ourselves because that's not their fault. They never perceived me that way. That's the way I perceive they're perceiving me.
Yeah.
And so for me, the big challenge is how can we as women as well um, take that responsibility and say, hey, I have a responsibility to also make sure that I don't act on what I think other people are thinking about me.
Yeah. True. It's what you said. How do you sometimes take the conversation away from you as well, right?
Yeah.
You want to go to your board and say, how can I help you? More and more, especially the US reverse mentoring is becoming a real um, yeah, differentiator because CEOs and C-level people want to connect again with what's happening in a realm in the company which they don't have access or perception about. We do have some more
Yeah,
questions. So one of the questions is: have you noticed differences in management styles between men and women?
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And in the beginning, I also came into leadership thinking this is how it should be because that's what I've seen around me. And it's been quite a journey to realize that hey, it's okay to be different. It's okay to have a different management style. Um, yeah, I definitely see differences. I think also it's personality differences. So across borders, you have that women are more agreeable and they're more empathetic, and men are less agreeable and therefore less empathetic. They're more task orientated. Women are more person orientated. But saying that, I've also met a lot of men who struggle with exactly the same things that I struggle with because it's a personality thing. But I would say in general, and that's also a management culture. That's not only gender differences. That's also incorrect and a destructive management culture where only the assertive people who really, and assertiveness is not wrong, but where you really have these people with high confidence factors and really hard and really tough people, they're seen as, oh, these are good managers. And I think that's also a cultural shift.
Yeah.
So I definitely see a difference between men and women, in the sense that men, it's easier for them to be that. It's easier for them to be take their emotions separate from what they do. I think women entangle everything. So and I don't know which is right or wrong, but there are definitely differences. Yeah,
Yeah. No, like you said, it's
different teams and different functions need different strengths.
yeah. Yeah, like you said, it's more about the culture, which is more about a collective and how it kind of reinforces itself, right? It's not
Yeah,
so much about a problem.
yeah.
Um, and you have a few compliments on that. That was quite a different perception on having empathy for unconscious biases in others. And Heidi says, "Dear Annalisa, never stop talking, please, both in English and Dutch. It's spot on."
Okay, good.
So, on that note, I think uh, we'll wrap it up. Uh, thank you for sharing, and thank you for doing what you're doing. Uh, Bottom up, bringing about change in ASML through Women for ASML. If anybody would like to connect with you, I guess they can reach out to you.
Yes,
Uh,
please. Yeah.
yeah. Do you want to say something finally?
Thanks for listening, and I really hope you can take this, whether you're in not in a group or not in anything, but just as a woman, wherever you go, take these things with you and help other women up. I think that's such a great opportunity we all have to help others. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. Thanks, Rikita, for organizing.
Can't
And
agree more.